All
Here
right,
we
we're
go.
live now. The mic's hot.
The
mics are hot.
The mic is hot. So, Darrin, where are you at again, Darrin? Are you up in Iowa? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, guys. Middle of nowhere, Iowa, Ames, Iowa. Population 30,000. With the kids here at Iowa State, about 60. So snowy, cold, a little miserable, a little gloomy, but we're keeping things bright in spirit.
Yeah, I know when we met down in Tampa, we connected on the fact that we were both wrestlers and growing up. So
That's
I
right.
remember that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, man. There's no tougher, there's no better sport for finding out what kind of toughness you got inside, because it's just you one-on-one. No teammates to blame there.
Yeah, right. Just you versus the other man. Who's better on that day? I like it.
Yep, that's right.
Anyway, so I guess we'll get rolling right into it. We got Darrin Carr with Carr Talent. He basically specializes in recruiting people for the real estate industry. So, Darrin, I just want to give yourself a little introduction. Feel free to show off some of your accolades and whatever. But
yeah, you bet, Chandler. So yeah, I came up in corporate. So I was a corporate boy for a long time. I only broke out on my own about 7 years ago. But I mean, I started off as a sales rep for some pretty big companies in publishing. So sales rep. Then I was a district sales manager, then a regional sales manager. So started hiring managers pretty early in my career, in my 20s, and did publishing for about 15 years. But then went on my last few years, my 10 years actually, where I was director of recruiting, director of training, and director of sales for some billion-dollar-plus companies out in New York and San Fran, Macmillan, Pearson, Prentice Hall, Cengage. So got a lot of good corporate structure, learned how to run a meeting, but man, I was on the road every week, all week. And after a while, that was just something I wanted to get out of. And by that time, I thought I had enough chops to do this on my own. So yeah, also having the good, being a sales trainer, good recruiting is good sales to a large degree. So I felt like I had a great background to strike out on my own. And so I did about 7 years ago.
Wow, that's awesome. So 7 years ago, did you just go into straight real estate recruiting? Like, how'd you get to where you are? Like, how'd you get down the path, start heading down that path?
Yeah, good question. So I actually partnered with a couple local companies to get my feet wet, to see how they did it. I didn't really appreciate exactly how they were doing things. So I realized I just wanted to go out on my own and do what I did best. And so I actually started just freelancing by myself for a few different big manufacturing companies doing started off in engineering, and things got busier and busier, started hiring more and more recruiters to help me. And then wandered into REI several years ago, and really didn't plan on it, but loved the space, loved the energy, loved the company owners. As I've heard, one REI client that we have, describe themselves as psycho action takers. I love that. I love the energy and the momentum behind it. So, and so we were introduced by these 3 or 4 or 5, companies that we were helping hire on a pretty regular basis to several other groups of REI conglomerates, collectives. And so, yeah, we busted in. We've been, hiring in REI for a few years, but really have made a big focus of it in the last year, to where we have, a lot of specific tools and training for our recruiters. Yeah, it's a great space to be in, and we're loving the hell out of it.
Yeah. So was the going to REI, was that more of like a personal thing, or did you just feel like you had a competitive advantage compared to other industries? Like, is there, I guess what I'm asking, is there a specific reason that it stood out besides just the owners?
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm a sales guy at heart, and a lot of these positions we start off with are sales, and those are the tricky ones: acquisitions managers, or AKA home buying specialists, lead managers, dispo. So, I mean, it is a different kind. Salespeople are a little trickier. It's a little bit different of a bird to recruit than your average position, right? Because engineers, pretty straight up, with salespeople, you not only got to dig into the skills and hard skills and soft skills and their cultural fit, but really it's a lot of it's motivation and character, because people are in sales for different reasons. And so it's kind of digging into the hearts, what lurks in the hearts of men and women who are in sales, to kind of really figure out, what makes them tick and if they're going to be a good fit for the company. So having hired hundreds and managed hundreds of salespeople, I felt like that's where I had something to contribute.
Yeah, I like that. Sales guys are unpredictable sometimes.
Oh,
You
yeah.
never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What's like one of the key things that stand out to you when you have a conversation with sales guys? Because from my personal experience, it's like some dudes just seem a little too like slick and smooth, to where like, I don't know what this guy's like really, if he's really like
Great
trying to
player.
sell me or, he's
Great
smoozing
team
me. Like,
player.
what? Yeah.
Yeah. What was that, Gino? How to determine if they're team players?
Well, I was saying, like, because, a lot of these guys, they're just trying to, like Chandler said, snooze you over. So you got to figure out they're a great team player,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you two things that we use that are important: behavioral interviewing, and which kind of eliminates as much as you can that slick story, and a stepped process. Like nothing, like you can determine pretty quickly some attributes of people with an interview or two. But we recommend, and we have a very step process here. And then when we hand our candidates off to clients, we recommend and help design the 3 to 5 steps after we hand off, because there is nothing can flush out or start to show the cracks in a character, in a candidate's character, or their foundation of who they are, than just repeated touch points with them. So, I mean, number one, just allow that time for that person to show themselves. That can include like casual sort of conversations in addition to formal interviews. And in fact, that's, them talking to prospective colleagues they'd be working with. They drop things that they might not often in a regular interview. And then into these behavioral questions. And it can be questions like, it can be about sales, but it can be about integrity as well. Tell me about a time when your integrity was at stake or helped you, win a sale. What was the situation? Walk me through it. What was the plan? Or if you had a challenge with sales, what was the plan? Who'd you talk to get the plan together?
Sure.
How did it execute? How did it unfold? Then how did it benefit the company? What were the metrics? And then what did you learn from that or do differently? So those meaty kind of 5-tiered behavioral questions are really hard to prepare for. And, it's not going to 100% flush out all the slicksters, but, you can do a fair bit of, of deciphering that with those kinds of questions and with the time and the step processes. And we always recommend using an assessment as one of those 3 to 5 touch points after we hand off candidates.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So like even the guys who like handle those off the wall questions that are a little deeper, and we call them the slicksters or whatever, but like, what's your opinion on that? Like if they handle them really well, like, and they're a good culture fit, like I guess they'd be a really great person to have on your team. Is that like kind of would that be the right thinking?
Well, I'll tell you what, if they fit 3 main criteria that I have, and maybe I mean, you can be slick and still have a good heart, or you can be slick and be slick to hide something, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on their motivation. I look, if they're slick, that could be fine. If they're a great communicator, that could be just great, unless they're masking something. But I mean, I would say, the 3 things that I look for, if they fit these things, then I think they're in the running. And that is number 1, do they, aptitude and ability, even over a lot of experience, right? So, if they've got that, hopefully in sales, for like an acquisitions manager, you need some sales experience. You need track record of success there. But a lot of people with experience don't have aptitude, don't have ability. A lot of people doing it who don't do it well. So do they have the aptitude and ability? Number 2, do they show that hustle, spark, drive, and ownership that they're just going to run with it? And number 4 is that, are they a cultural fit? And so there are a lot of questions you can ask at to get at cultural fit to see if they might align with your company and your core values. And we've got lists of those that we provide, people for free. But, tell me about a culture that you thrived in. Why did you thrive in it? Where were you simpatico with the owners on that? And where did things really align? And tell me about a culture where you didn't align with. So that can tell you a little bit about, the culture, their cultural fit, and maybe their values, and ask them, what are their core values? And, to tell me about if you had an issue with your supervisor, your manager, or your superior, what happened then? How'd you handle it? So you got to come at it for a few different angles. But if they've got those things I mentioned, like aptitude, hustle, cultural fit, that's pretty good. That's pretty good way on to a good fit.
Yeah,
sure.
I like that. How do you what's your opinion on culture and core value? I guess starting, how do you define culture?
How do I define it?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm actually redoing mine right now here too, and just kind of making sure that it's not just my culture, but it's also the culture that the other people in my company want to provide. So we've got a working doc right now, and everybody's kind of putting in their 2 cents about what that is and should be. And I think it should be revisited from time to time. In fact, I was just talking to a client the other day, and I have a lot of clients in REI who, their first culture is like, go get them, crush, kill, destroy. And then, a few years later, they're like the evolved of this. Let's help the community. Let's help people. So I think, first of all, it needs to be revisited from time to time, depending on where your company is. But the culture is simply the core values in action for a company. And with demonstratable anecdotes. When we do a discovery meeting for our clients and we really dig into what makes them sparkle and what makes them great and how we can attract great people away from their jobs, we ask a lot about, tell me an example, give me an anecdote, a story about what you did in some instances that really helped your salespeople. And so that's how I would define it, is core values in action.
I like that. So how do you get your core? Let's say I have no core values. How am I going to get those? Because I believe that those are the most important things for our company.
I agree completely. Yeah. For long-term fit, even for short-term fit, a lot of times you just got to make sure. And I will tell you, just before COVID hit, and now really people have really reassessed how much culture is important to them to even bigger degree. But even before COVID hit, 60% of worker motivation or worker ability to something that would compel them to make a change was the culture. So we have documents which help people formulate their culture, but a simple method is this. You can do, and I have an example. Here's just cutting it down to basics. We are the company that does A because of B, which results in C. And so I have one client, and their thing is, we are the company that values family first. So we insist all of our employees go to all their kids' functions, and that results in longevity in the role. And the average tenure at that company is 12 years. So we're the company that does an A because of B, which results in C. So that's a solid, way of kind of determining that. And you can go through all the core values you have and provide examples in that way.
I like that. So would you do, because I'm just trying to get the grasp. So with those 3 things, like A, B, and C, are those core values, or am I saying my core value is integrity, and I do that because of A, which make
yes,
B, C?
Yeah, our core value is integrity, and so we make sure that we do as best as we can to make sure everybody is being honest with one another with respect. And that produces a culture that everybody feels like they are empowered to make suggestions and still be respected. So that's exactly right, Chandler.
Okay, gotcha. I thought that's how I understand. I just wanted to make that clear in my head too. I was like, wait.
Yeah,
but I like that. I like that. So you break down it, and then how do you determine if it's let's say I have a list of core values I think are my core values. How do you break them down? How do you if me and Gina are doing the exercise together, how do I, if I write down these values are important to me and he writes them down, are you just crossing them off? What is something?
Yeah. Well, here's what I would do is I would take, and I'm just doing this right now. I have, I think, a great recruiting crew, and I have, a few that are just the absolute best. And so I'm digging into like taking their essence and putting it in a bottle. And a lot of that's the company, is a cultural fit. They have this. So I'm like deconstructing why these people are successful and what they are lending to our company culture and why they are such a good fit. And like, oh, okay, well, this Edelyn is one of my better recruiters, and she displays this. All right, that value is really aligning with our company because she sees resonance in it and she's running with it. So that helps me. And then on the reverse side, who has not worked in your company and what did they demonstrate that didn't work? And there are companies who have a policy, a company culture value that's a 100% no jerks policy, right? No jerks in the team, no jerks for clients. And so what made them jerks? That, deconstructing that can help you, like, put into your core values what you want to avoid. So
I kind of like that, like hit not only what you want, but also what you don't want. That's sometimes a shorter list. Is like we can't have these things.
Yeah. And you can ask questions around those and get some feedback. Like, for instance, like, ability to handle conflict or differing opinions. If you hear anything about some, in the interview process, anything about, some sort of confrontation with a manager and this company did me wrong in this way and that way. I mean, that's something worth digging into.
Red flag right there.
That's a red card.
Yeah, that's right. Red card.
Yeah. Taking it back to the Dayton 101.
Darrin, I'm just curious too. Like, what have you seen? Because, you're hiring for a bunch of individuals in that real estate space. What have you seen the hardest position to fill in the market right now?
Well, I would say just in general, probably the most challenging are the acquisitions managers, home buying specialists, and only because they can come from a lot of different places. It's not as defined of a job description, bullet points on qualifications as all the others are. Operations manager, we know what they need to have done. Yeah, exactly. Transaction coordinator, that's pretty detail oriented. But from the home buying specialist, acquisitions manager, they can come from a lot of different walks of life. Our clients typically don't require real estate experience. In fact, a lot of them don't want real estate experience, bad habits or whatever. So because we got a much bigger candidate pool to select from. And again, it's salespeople, and you got to dig into, what motivates them, why they're in it, and how, what they want to do with their sales success and their career, and how they can see themselves growing in your company. So I would say and you're looking for a higher level of sophistication than you would be obviously a lead manager, right? You need somebody who can, really understand motivations behind somebody who needs to sell their house. And so you're looking for a balance of empathy, but directness, right? Hey, listen, I feel about your position here. That's a tough spot to be, but we need to take we need a plan here. And, here's the plan. So it can be tough to find an assertive salesperson who has a high level of empathy and can relate to the home seller.
Yeah, I would agree. What's your opinion on like finding like the right person who's like a good person for the fit for the company, and they're maybe they have the skills of being like a high achiever and a salesperson, but they have no experience, and like having them be kind of like a lead manager and then transition up the ladder?
Yes, it can be done. It is a little bit trickier. They are different personality profiles. They can be. We have hired people who have been lead managers for a few months, 6 months maybe, and they move into an acquisitions manager role. But we have a list of attributes that I'm looking at right now that I help train our recruiters on. And for instance, lead managers, you obviously want strong relationship builders, great work ethic, work under pressure, good communicator, but they've got to be, they've also got to be okay with working on repetitive tasks autonomously. And that might not be something that translates well into a lot of people who are good acquisitions managers, where they're more entrepreneurial. They're more self-starters. They have strong negotiating skills. They are available. They're motivated to succeed in a very sometimes unstructured and highly competitive environment, which can be and commonly is different from the person who is a good lead manager who needs that structure. So it can be done. It's trickier.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So like,
I agree.
Go ahead, Gino.
No, I was just saying I agree because like if you look at traditional salesmen, they're not going to want to be doing all the little tasks of follow-ups and drips inside the campaign. You know, they're not going to be able to handle the same, tasks every day. They want to be doing their own thing and like, obviously growing, but you just have to train them, and that's the big thing is like making sure if you have that person that's not good at that you're setting expectations with them and knowing that, more than likely their personality profile, all that tells us is how long they're going to do the job efficiently, because like at the end of the day, they're going to burn out, 6 months, 7 months if they're, if we haven't someone that doesn't fit that profile.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How do things like get changed? Like, let's say someone has a pretty dialed in sales process versus someone doesn't have a sales process at all. Like, I'm assuming that would change the profile of type of person you would want to recruit, or would that make any difference?
Well, I think it would change the profile in that you would want somebody with more experience. You'd want somebody who, who knows that sales process and can bring to bear what they have learned and been trained to help that owner or operations manager or whoever it is put that sales process together. So there, I'd be looking for more people who know, those, I call it PINPOC: preparation, introduction, needs analysis, presentation, overcoming objections, and closing. And you'd want somebody, I think, who is fairly more advanced in the actual, sales process than perhaps you would if you did have an already really well-defined sales process. And that's just the one-on-one process with a seller. And certainly if they have experience with, structuring how the whole process works, I think that would be even more important if the particular company doesn't have that yet. So I'd say their experience would be more important.
For sure. If you guys have any questions watching here, let us know.
Yeah, for sure. Darrin's the king of this, so he's the expert. So, but anyways, so finding like an expert, like let's say like if you're trying to find someone who's more experienced, I know we were talking a little bit before the show. It's like a lot of people forget that recruiting is like kind of a sales thing too. So it goes hand in hand. So like, what are some, like, let's say you get a guy who's got experience. Obviously, you don't have a track record of having sales guys performing in your company. How are you kind of handling that conversation? Like, if you don't have much of a track record, so you can't say you're gonna make X off of commissions. This is what people have done in the past. Then you have someone who's experienced coming in and wants to work, see if it's a good fit.
Okay, and so your question is around the fact that a lot of it's commission based, right?
Yeah. Like let's say it's an acquisitions, majority commission based. Maybe you can structure it with a draw or whatever, but like how are you handling that to try to like lock in someone who's really solid that's gonna,
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a constant challenge. And a lot of our discovery meetings that we have when we first have a kickoff meeting with our clients are around that. Because of this, you've got this group of salespeople, right? And you've got, let's say this is the bandwidth of salespeople that are maybe open to looking, who are doing pretty well. Or you've got this little band right here who have been commission only and they are good at it and they're confident at it and they don't have any hesitation. They know they're awesome. Then you've got this middle swath, and that's the majority. And there are people who have, some foundation, some base, some draw, something that gets them by for a while. And they could be amazing salespeople, but maybe they don't want to give up $30,000 or $40,000 or whatever $50,000 a year base, to take a total chance on an industry that they're not completely certain of yet. And then on the other end, you've got the down and outers who will give anything a try. We don't even want to touch those, right? Sure, they'll go commission, but that's, we don't want those. So, I mean, what we commonly recommend, and I think a lot of the, key people and some of the masterminds and collectives that I'm a part of agree, is that some draw, and I certainly feel this way, some draw and or base, at least for the first 90 days, is much more preferable than straight up commission only.
Can you, before you go any further, could you actually elaborate on what a draw and a base are, and just in case anyone's not familiar with that?
Yeah, right on. So a base is a paycheck cut every 2 weeks, and there's no strings attached to it, right? So, and the draw is a check cut to that person to keep them afloat for a few months, but that money will come out of their future commissions. They'll need to repay that back in a draw. So, people do both ways. So to answer your question, the best case scenario is to have some sort of base or draw. We get a more robust candidate pool with that. And you don't want people who are afraid, obviously, of making a sale, and that they need to know 90% of what they are, going to bring in is because of their efforts. They have to be fully committed and on board with that. And they've got to see the excitement of making, 80, 90, 100, 125 in their first year, for if they're kicking it for acquisitions manager, or home buying specialist, whichever you prefer. What we do when we reach out to our potential candidates is we will say something that's a little vague, but we'll get some response. 75 or 80% of our our hires, which we think are quality, come from us reaching out to them. We find them and they look good, right? Rather than all the applicants coming in, which is kind of right now, even before COVID, it was a quagmire that you just had to slog through of a lot of unqualified people. But so when we reach out with our messaging, you can phrase it like, some potential base or draw, considered with the right candidate, opportunity to make between X and X, get their attention. And then what we really do is, in addition to those, the compensation, in our messaging and in the job description is, we put up right up front in our job description, right up front, it's what we offer. And even before responsibilities or qualifications, it's bulleted out with not just comp, but all the perks that, that come with working in the culture, like ability to make meaningful contributions, ability to grow within the role and the company. Flexibility is huge, especially in this pandemic pivot, which I can describe more later. So to answer your question, to provide the general earning value this person has, but also really balance it well with a lot of the non-monetary things that come to the person who's in the right job for the right reason and the right culture.
Gotcha. So if you find someone who's pretty good and you're ready to go and you have no past history, you just recommend a draw or a base with a commission.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. That's right. I've seen between 1, 2, and 3,000 a month typically for the first 90 days.
1, 2, and 3.
What's the commission usually on that?
I have a whole bunch of different commission structures that we have pulled out. People do it wildly different. But I can, actually just, give me a moment here. I can, pull up a couple that I think that have been, most popular, but anybody listening to this can reach out to me and I'm happy to send this. We get comp models for acquisitions managers, lead managers, transaction coordinators, dispo, operations managers.
We can get your email dropped in the Facebook group chat. It's just Darrin at cartalent.com.
Yep. DARRIN at cartalent.com.
You got all the R's in your name.
Yeah, right on. I know.
You stole them all from Gino's name.
Exactly.
So definitely reach out to Darrin for all those things, because that's questions we get all the time is like, how should we comp, our acquisitions and the lead managers, and
it's the
hard
most
to
common
do it.
question I get. Yeah.
Like, how should we do?
But typical something like $36,000 base plus 6% bonus on profit. Let's see, $625 a week for 4 months, 5% on each bonus for the first 4 months of the probationary period. Hourly rate plus a flat fee for closing deal. There's
a lot of them.
So sorry.
So that's a lot of them right there.
Yeah. 65K base with 500 per deal. Some people who just go straight 10% commission. or 15%, depending on, if they bring it in themselves, with no base. But again, I'd recommend the base or the
What
drop.
TC, Darren? What does that look like? I'm just curious. For TC, how are those? What's that comp looking like?
Yeah, let me pull it up here for you here real quick. Just make sure I'm
Just pull
being
it up.
accurate.
Just curious and being a little selfish, but
Yeah, no problem. So one is 25 an hour plus $50 per transaction. 13 to 19 an hour with $100 per transaction. Kind of all over the place in that
Gotcha.
regard. There's a whole bunch of different ones here as well.
Yeah. So somewhere around like the 4 to 5K a month range is what I'm kind of guessing.
Yeah, looks like it. There's a whole bunch of different ones.
So many of them,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I'm sure there's endless. So I got another question too, is like one of the things we're thinking is like you said growth within the role. So what do you mean by that when you say growth within the role?
Yeah, you bet. So what is important to the people who are good, who want to do well, is that they're going to get better at their job. And so, by the way, this is important when you're interviewing somebody, not only the answers to the questions you're getting, but the questions they ask you. The questions they ask you should be about how they get better in the job, not all about what's in it for them. You want to hear questions like, who would I be working with? How would they support me? What kind of training do you have? How will I be measured? And so this, continuing education, continuing growth, maybe they, once every couple of weeks, they sit in on somebody else doing the job for an hour and they learn from each other. But for the people who are best in their roles, they want to know the path to getting even better in their job. And, I would say not a ton of companies really have an extended training program, like that. But those who do, I think it attracts the right type of people. Oh yeah, here's what we'd be offering you to kind of continue get bettering at the job. And some companies even pay for outside education. Maybe it's a sales training for, lead managers or home buying specialists. So yeah, to provide some options on how they continue to grow within the role and what kind of mentoring they're going to get from their superior. We meet once a week and we kind of go through what your challenges are and we strategize about what you've come up against and talk through how you might tackle it next time.
Yeah, I like that. Have you heard? So like, I guess you're kind of talking about this like with continued training. Like, have you heard of any people in the real estate industry doing anything like if once you do X number of deals, you get like a pay bump or like a commission bump? So like you start like, let's say your target commission is like 6%, you start at like 4, and then like if you do like 20 deals, you get 5. Then once you do like 50, you get 6 or whatever it is. Like,
yes, there's a part of this. One of these compensation models here, like for instance, an acquisitions manager is a pretty complicated, bracketed out for just what you're saying. You can get pretty complicated, but yeah, absolutely. We see that. Most often it's more simpler, but it's for certain we see those tiers.
Yeah, I got you. That makes sense. Cool. So what are some things that people can do today if you're trying to hire an acquisitions guy or a lead manager? What are some like steps they can do? Obviously, besides hiring you, of course, but it's like low hanging fruit items.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the basic things that you need to do before you even start hiring, and I would recommend 15% of the hiring process is the company and the owner thinking through these questions and the plan to hire before they even start. 15% is what I would recommend. And those questions are, who should I hire next? There's exercises, that based on, that I can talk a little bit more about if you like, but asking yourself, where is my next hire? I'm actually working on a project with somebody else right now that is based on where the gross revenue is for a company. At what point do you hire what position?
Mm-hmm.
That'll be available in about a month, but there's a simple exercise on that, like who's your next hire. That comes like what pain points, what are the bottlenecks, how many hats is the owner wearing, and what's that stopping general business development. And so who should I hire next? Identifying very clearly, and I can go into more detail on all of these, exactly what your exact needs are and what are the absolute non-negotiable 5 must-haves that you have to have, functionally and culturally. And then the number 3 question is, what makes this job and this company compelling? So good, as we mentioned before, good recruiting is good sales. It's at the beginning of the process and then throughout for those people who rise to the top. And I've got a document and some advice on how you lock down that perfect candidate in the process, because they can slip away very easily in this ultra tight labor market right now. But to determine who should hire next, what are your exact needs, what are the must-haves, what are the nice-to-haves, and then what makes you attractive, how are you going to compel people away who are already happy. So because that's what you want. You want people who are already killing it and don't know they could kill it even more with you. So and then there's the building of the process. It's building what that hiring process looks like. So all the stakeholders know, what they're responsible for. I've got specifics there if we want to go into that. And then obviously developing your, some potent interview questions, and assessments, that are part of that 3 to 5, touch points with a candidate, before you, make an offer without making an offer is how we phrase it. So those are the big key steps, and we can go into as much detail as you want on any of those.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I guess just let's just start visiting them. Let's hit the first one in a little more detail.
Sure. Yeah. So the first one is fairly simple. It's who you should hire next. And what I recommend there is let me just back this up and say, what is a hiring blueprint? It is something that it's a process that's been agreed upon by everybody who's part of that process, and they know what their role is. And it's anybody who's relevant to that hiring process, especially that person's coming in the office, they need to know what the company what's your company culture, what are you going out there with. So this hiring blueprint is agreed, or at least known by everybody in the company that this candidate's walking into, so everybody's on the same page and you don't get discord between the candidate's conversation with one person and then another. Wait, he said that and then she said that. That doesn't make sense to me. So you need that. It helps you get on the same page. What's this blueprint do? It helps you. It shortens your time to hire. It helps ensure that this process is scalable, and repeatable. You can use this hiring process again. Make sure you get hopefully consistently good hires by not skipping steps. Helps you compare them fairly, and you put people through the same rigors so that there isn't one person doing half of what another person did. And it also builds out what I mentioned before, builds out that process where people can reveal themselves in terms of character and drive and motivation. And it ensures a good candidate experience if you've got it all planned out. And that's important. And we have gone to work for some clients, not a ton, but a couple that have a terrible reputation in their area. And we hear from the candidates, I heard about that. My friend, or I interviewed, or my friend did, or there's a Glassdoor review that's awful. Have you read it, Darrin? I'm like, no, but I'll go now. So that's that hiring blueprint, really does help, do that. So
for sure.
To step into the first one is who should hire next. I'll keep this pretty brief. You can do as much work on this as you like, but what a good idea is just to build out your ideal org chart for the next year or 3 years or 5 years or all. You consider, where are your gaps, what's going to make you have a winning, lucrative 2022? Where are you missing? Where's the bottleneck? Most of our hires are owners coming to us because they're bottlenecked. They're holding up the process, right? So often it's the acquisitions manager they need, or a lead manager, and then shortly thereafter it's an operations manager. But what hats are people wearing that are taking them away from better, bigger, more strategic, impactful responsibilities that's going to carry the business to the next level and 5x or 10x it. So and then you want to consider other people in your organization. What hats are they wearing where they shouldn't be? That's also bottlenecking. So that would be the first step.
What on that point, what advice would you give to someone who's starting out and maybe they're looking to hire their first person, or maybe they already have maybe an assistant who kind of does a lot of the admin work? Like what kind of advice would you give to that person?
In terms of what
Who
specific?
to hire, like how to decipher who should I hire?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one that's a tricky question because it's a little bit different for everybody. It's sort of based on the owners or the operation managers' skills and bandwidth. Like I said, most often for us, it starts with an acquisition manager or a lead manager and then gets into operations. Typically, the owners of these companies are, of any, these companies that we deal with are entrepreneurs, they're visionaries. They want they want to focus on things that are going to make the big difference, and they're not really big into the nitty-gritty details of accountabilities and processes and controls. And so that's I would have to just give you a little bit of a vague answer and say it's a case by case basis depending on your own talents and how many people you have on staff. But that's typically what we see: acquisitions manager, lead manager, operations assistant.
Yeah, just whatever's going to relieve the bottleneck of the business, I guess, mostly to produce more revenue.
Yep.
Cool. All right, let's hit number 2.
Yeah. Number 2 is what are the exact needs of the role and what are the metrics you're going to judge them by? So we have a ton of, by the way, again, another thing I'll offer is job descriptions for all the positions in REI. That help our clients, figure out, oh yeah, this bullet makes sense. This is what I need. But to really break down exactly what you need from them every week, every day, every week, every month, every quarter, and every year. And that will help you get very clear on your expectations and their KPIs, which will, help them know right away what's expected of them and help keep them on track. Also, obviously helps you build out your job description. So you need to list the hard skills, the soft skills, keeping into account that a lot of hard skills are teachable. As I mentioned, I look for hustle and cultural fit and aptitude oftentimes over a lot of experience. So identifying your exact needs in that way, I think, is a key step in getting it down on paper. So, along the same lines of describing the role responsibilities, and your non-negotiables, you can start thinking about, where do you think your richest pool of candidates are? From what, if you have personal experience or have partnered with other, or spoken with other REI companies, where have they had experience with? Or if you're consulting a recruiter, like me, or utilizing somebody like us, like identifying the richest pool of candidates, who are we going to go after? What are the key words that we're going to use to identify these people? What are the attributes that we need them to have? And then, along with that is just starting to determine what makes these people motivated. And, that's going to help fill out your what we offer. So exact needs. And then, the last question to ask yourself is, what makes this company and this job compelling? We spend a lot of time in our discovery meetings really digging into, as I mentioned, why is the company compelling? Why is the opportunity a great, why is it amazing? In the job description, we just want to have bullet after bullet on all that to attract these people away from where they're at. I think that takes a while. And some things that you may not think of, and I've mentioned a couple of them before, that are compelling to people other than money are, alignment in core values and culture, a tight take with each other's, culture and that person's culture, the company culture versus the candidate, opportunity to grow within the job and within the company. Several of our clients offer also in addition to monetary, offer their candidates the opportunity to invest, to be buyers, or invest in rentals. That's helpful for some people. Opportunity to work and learn from experts in the field like you folks, training programs, ability to make meaningful contributions to their community, flexibility,
Gotcha.
That kind of thing.
So yeah, I get it. So it's like, some people I know, I think Matthew Simmons, I saw him on Steve's podcast. Like he said that he, after I think every third creative finance deal, he'll let the acquisition manager get first dibs on it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we're working with him as well right now. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
I know that. And then you're saying also like, hey, look, we're gonna get you in, for the other like benefits, we're gonna get you in these mentorships that, this education that costs, tens of thousands of dollars. So we're investing in you. Like that's what you're also pitching to these candidates as well.
That's right. I think that shows a deep level of commitment to the people you're working with, and you're letting them get a piece. So I think that's very compelling.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. What is your opinion on like working virtually, like working from home option, like no office? Like how is that kind of played into the whole entire recruiting process?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely done a lot more now. A lot of people are very nervous about it. And the quick answer is it can be done and is done very well if managed properly. So for your recruiter or for yourself, first of all, it opens up the candidate pool times a million when you can look anywhere in the United States. You get the creme de la creme. Do we find local people who are great? Yeah, of course. But absolutely, it can be done. We just worked with a big company, Eric Brewer at Integrity, and Ben Mott there, and they weren't completely convinced about remote for transaction coordinators, and we just hired them a couple of transaction coordinators remotely. They weren't completely sure about it, and they've closed 24 transactions in a month here, the first month. So
Look at that.
yeah. So the quick answer is it can be done if it's managed well and the KPIs are clear.
Yeah. Is it like a big, I guess, selling point to some of the people you're recruiting to be able to work from home?
Yes. Okay. So if they are off in another part of the United States, probably they're not going to be coming into the office at all unless they are in leadership, right?
Yeah.
But there are people that we hire local who maybe come into the office 2 or 3 times a week, or maybe it's full, maybe it's 5 days a week for a couple months, and then they get a day or two where they can work out of their home once they've proven themselves. It's absolutely a draw. Pandemic pivot has really affected everybody's mindset. It's one of the reasons why it's so hard to hire right now. First of all, you get a lot more jobs than you have people. You got 40 million businesses that couldn't hire as many as people that they wanted to in the last several months. Several small businesses, and pandemic pivot is part of that. People have reassessed how much, if they want to work, how much they want to work, where they want to work, under what conditions, in what industry. Do they want to do what they were doing before? And flexibility has really skyrocketed as one of the things that people that is compelling for them. So if you can offer some flexibility right away, or even after they've proven themselves, that's a plus.
I like that. So I think like probably, at least for us too, is like from our experience, is not hiring is like half the battle, but like the onboarding process of like once you hire someone is probably like just as important as hiring the right person.
Yeah, it for sure is. Yeah, I gave a presentation at the end of last year about onboarding for success and long-term retention, and you need expertise there. That's something that's really hard. It's hard to recruit because people don't have what we have, and that's the time, tools, process, and expertise. And I would say the same thing for onboarding. Unless you have the checklists and the process down, you're just kind of winging it. And you're right. That first week, 2 weeks, 1 month are just critical, and most people aren't experts in that.
Yeah. What are some of the things that stand out to like the new hire you have, and like some of the like the key, like if you do these 3 things, you got a good chance of making a good impact, having a big impact on this new person you just hired?
Yeah, that's a great, structure and the tools and a process. I'll give a quick example. As a local company here, I helped restructure their recruiting department. It's like a 6-month contract I just did on the site. $7 billion manufacturer, China, Denmark, Germany, you name it. Yeah,
Dang.
went in there, first day, sat in a cubicle. They had nothing. I read some brochures they put in front of me because they didn't have anything for me. So
And like you were like being hired by them?
Yeah, I was contracted to help them restructure and rework what, their recruiting program. And their first day was me reading a brochure because somebody realized nobody had anything for me to do. So, yeah, $7 billion company.
Jesus.
So anyway, so it is the materials prepared. It is a schedule for the first weeks, and it is checklists that we have and provide. We have an HR arm as well, where we help companies help onboard their new employees. So it's tools, schedules, and checklists and clarity, and just good assessing. Are you like any good trainer, are you getting what you need? Yeah, do you have any questions? But you need the tool, you need the checklists, you need the process, you need the schedule, and you need multiple people involved in orienting this person to your ways, and you need to check in with them to make sure they're internalizing it. So that's a really simple, vague answer, but we have a lot of very specific tools that dig in.
So like if you're training let's say an acquisitions manager, I guess having something that goes across the sales process, maybe it's a script, teaching the script and how it works and some basic things like that, or is there what kind of materials are you speaking of?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that pertains to their job, scripts. First of all, their expectations are clear, very clear, and make sure that they understand that, and even maybe sign off on it. But here's what you're responsible for. Here's how we communicate here. Here's the tools in which we communicate. Here's our culture. Here's what we value, as we talked about in the interview process. And now we're going to talk about, the process by which you do your job and the tools that you use them, the tools by which you are going to be successful. And it can be in the end, fun things that welcome to the company, like a little welcome basket or something like that goes a long way. Just something to show they're welcome and warmly welcomed into the company. But yeah, there's quite a few things that you can do in onboarding to make someone feel welcome and to give them the structure and then the instruction that they need.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So yeah, I think the expectations are crystal people, and also I think the initial whenever we were doing it, it's man, how are they gonna do this? When I give them these expectations, how are they gonna take it? But I think if you hire someone who's basically hungry and got the hustle, like Darrin was talking about, they'll figure it out. They're oh, you say I got to get one contract signed in the first 2 weeks or 1 month or whatever your expectation is. They're okay, that's what I got to do, and then they just do it, and they make
that's
it
right.
happen.
And some of the things that well, if I might jump back a bit on how you build your assessment process, on how you build your hiring process before we run out of time, I could cover that because some of that will help in the onboarding process.
Let's do it.
Let's hit it.
Okay. So, so it's super important to build out, to decide, what those touch points are going to be with all your internal stakeholders. And like I said, I recommend 3 to 5 candidate touches. It can be an assessment and I'll just give you, there's phone screens, there's video interviews, there's formal interviews, there's assessments, there are predictive index or DISC. There are panel interviews with a couple of people. There are in-depth interviews. And then maybe, the one that I think is it takes time and it's a lot, but it's job shadowing. It's having that candidate come in and sit next to the person who's doing the job for an hour or 2 or 3. And there you get real insight. You're asking, hey, what do you think about this? That's, this person who's doing the job just did that. What do you think about that? What would you do differently? What do you think went well? What didn't? How do you think you might react to this at this point in the conversation or in this process? How would you improve the process? So it is figuring out who does what in that process. And then if you're working with an agency, to make clear, what parts that you are doing, but, to decide and standardize, who is doing what throughout the process and who is asking what. It's, I think, helpful. One thing that I'd recommend, it's a little structured, but if you have 3 people interviewing the same candidate, perhaps you have a little bit of a different twist on each interview. This person's maybe focusing in on culture, and this person's interviewing on sales skills. There's some common questions that maybe should be asked at the same time, though, so you can compare answers for consistency when you meet at the end. Something that I have learned in corporate is to help eliminate groupthink, is to have those top 5 negotiables and to rank them 1 through 5 at the end of the interview. All right. And then let's say you talk to 5 candidates. You're ranking each candidate 1 through 5 and who you would choose. And then you're meeting as a group, and you don't have this groupthink that occurs. You've got written down the order in which you would hire that person, and you've also got them ranked in all the important attributes that you're hiring for. So it's pretty structured, but I think it's really helpful. Like, oh, you picked him as number 1 or her as number 1. Well, I did this, and I think it promotes a really good debate. So obviously everybody should have, the job description and their assignment in terms of what they're asking about. But, I would, set up that process in the way I've described. I compare at least 3 to 5 candidates. Nothing brings clarity like comparison. You might think number 2 is great until you talk to number 4, and then something number 5 says sheds light on an answer number 1 said, and it really kind of helps crystallize things in your mind. So that's a brief skinny on the structure of the assessment process, but I think it's something that perhaps not a lot of people do as much as they might.
Yeah, I think that's big. I think like even just a simple one of asking the same question multiple times to see if someone's lying, you might catch someone in a little white lie.
Oh yeah, police do it all the time, right? So
yeah, that's pretty smart. Yeah, I like that and the job shadowing. So the job shadowing is to see their skills. I'm guessing, like, to kind of understand like what they bring to the table. Is like, and then just the assessment part is like, yeah, I think so. Like, what are did you say the negotiables or the non-negotiables? Like the attributes that you need to see in this position. Is that what you're saying? Like, that's what you're comparing in that part?
Yeah, that's right. Your top 3 to 5 most important things you need out of that candidate, and you're ranking them 1 through 5. 5 being the highest score, and you can get in together and meet as a group for everybody who had a contact point with that candidate, and you're comparing answers. And like I said, it kind of eliminates groupthink. It eliminates people agreeing with each other just to agree with each other. If you've got your own thoughts,
I like that. We got one question here from Kobe. You guys dropped some amazing gems on the side. Darrin, if you're taken back to when you were 21 years old, would you start off working corporate or would you take another route?
That's a great question. I have never been asked that before. I might ask that in my interviews.
Hey, Kobe.
I was never a huge corporate person, but I'll say this: it gave me a lot of structure, and it taught me how to run a meeting. And I had a lot of great mentors who were highly structured. And so, whether I didn't enjoy all parts of it, but it really, I think, did set me up to have more structure as an entrepreneur. Gotcha. So I would say I would continue, and I would do it as I did it before.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So how can Darrin, the listeners that are watching the recording or watching now, how can they, we got your email here. Is that where they can reach out if they're interested in some of your services, or is there a website, or is there somewhere where they can reach out?
Yep. So you can, my website is, www.carrtalent.com, CARRTALENT.com. And my phone number is 641-691-2990. And then the email is a good way as well. So any of those 3 methods.
Darrin giving it all out today.
If you guys want to get someone put on, then there you go. He's the man with the plan.
But thanks for coming on today, Darrin. Is there any last things you want to leave the listeners?
I would say, if I had to wrap up, the conversation, I would say 3 important things to hiring well are, be proactive with reaching out to candidates, to, getting your game plan together, that hiring blueprint. Number 2, hire for hustle, culture, and aptitude. And then when you're in the process of hiring, you got to be aggressive and responsive in this incredibly tight labor market. Candidates are gone in hours or days, not weeks. So you need to move quick.
For sure.
Yeah, like
hire advice.
That's right. People make everything better. If you get the right people in there, it's a game changer. That's for sure.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And then you hold those gems tightly. I've got a couple of them right now that I can't imagine what my business would be without it. Yeah. Appreciate this opportunity, guys, very much. This is a lot.
For sure.
For sure.
Thanks again for coming on, Darrin.
Yeah, appreciate you, Darrin. So guys, we'll see you guys next week. And I guess we're rolling
Have
out.
a good week.